Here we go. All right. All right. Oh, my word. Holy cow. Can you believe it's December 2024? It's mine. Huh? Yeah. It's crazy. Mind blowing. We're here. The last month, the final stretch. Wow. So much has happened. So much has happened in a year. Before we get into that, welcome to the HEF podcast. HEF stands for the Home Education Foundation. It is a organization started by the beloved Brenda Dickinson. Back in the 90s, Brenda Dickinson has been the home education lobbyist for a very long time. She's been working to protect home education rights ever since she helped write the bill that put home education law in place 40 years ago. So for 40 years, 4 decades, she's been the sentinel, keeping watch in the Capitol to protect parents' rights to educate as they see fit without interference of outside institutions or organizations. And so we're here to carry that work on and keep it going forward. And we can do that with very special thanks to our top sponsors who really come in a big way to make things possible. We do get support from families, a little bit of support here and there from families across Florida, which is great. But it's not quite enough to sustain the work that we do. So our top sponsors are there really, really coming in clutch. So we want to give them special thank you. We have Arete, and we have FPEA. FPEA has been around for an equally long time. And they throw the largest homeschool convention in the country, I believe, which is fantastic. It's definitely the largest in Florida, which is awesome. Fisher Precious Metals. And these are wonderful people, so give them a round of applause. And if you know any of them, send them a thank you message on behalf of us. We'll dive right into it. We're missing someone today. We're missing Brenda. So I guess this will be a little bit of a special announcement. She injured herself. She was taking care of family out of town. One of her family members is having surgery, heart surgery, and she was watching the children and spilled boiling water on her arm. And I saw the picture. It
looks painful.
Painful. It looks very painful. So pray for her. Definitely keep her in your prayers. She is not with us today. And I did not know that she did that right before the stream last week.
Yeah, she just hopped right on and didn't even tell us.
Yeah, I would have probably canceled the stream and let her go do her thing, or at least not had her on. Like, oh my goodness. It definitely looks like she needed medical attention. Poor thing. Anywho, here we are. So what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of recap some of the things. I don't like to assume that just everybody watches all of our videos so that whatever we've seen, you've seen, or whatever we've said before, you've seen before. So one of the things we want to do today is kind of recap our goals for the upcoming session so that that's easily obtainable and shareable for people who have questions. Go over some of the issues that we still are seeing with FHSAA and Step Up. That's the Florida High School Athletics Association and the Step Up for Students. issues that we still see trickling in. I don't see as many more of them, but there are there. So we'll kind of go through some of those and some of our goals and just kind of have a little wrap up session or a forecasting session. You want to say anything before we dive in?
Um, I was just thinking it's crazy that this time last year was when we were frantically packing and preparing to move up here. So
That's
um,
true.
it's been it's been almost a year. We moved officially up
Mm-hmm.
here the first week of January. January 5th was when we arrived in Tallahassee, but um,
Mm-hmm.
we were right around Thanksgiving is when we made the decision to move. And then we
Mm-hmm.
spent the month of December frantically packing. Our daughter had her 13th birthday party, and then we were out of there um, right after
Mm-hmm.
the end of December. So it's
It
been a
it's an
crazy
interesting.
year.
It has been a crazy year, and it's something I've been actually reflecting on quite a bit lately because with Thanksgiving and everything, we just walked past Thanksgiving, uh, and our timeline. It's had me kind of contemplating this time of year last year and everything that's happened in between and all the things that I'm thankful for. And it was actually around June. Was it June? Yeah, June of last year. I had just started working with Brenda around February of last year, helping redo the website, and we didn't. I think we started the podcast around June or
I
something.
think our first one was maybe
July.
July.
Yeah, yeah. So it was around June that I was just kind of contemplating. We were looking for somebody to take over, so I was building up the HEF visuals and branding and kind of getting things set up so that she was looking to have a lobbyist come in and replace her eventually, and so she could retire, and looking for the right person. And the more I learned about everything that she had done, the more um, in awe of all of this I was, and I was keenly aware that the person who we needed to do this going forward would have to be someone who was not in it for the money, because economy comes and goes. It goes up, it goes down, and in a nonprofit type work, or in a work where your income is resource is based on the contributions of a collective, the contributions rise and fall with the economy as well. And so it's one of those things that it's not necessarily a constant. It's not like there's a product you're selling. It's the goodwill of people. And so being aware of that, it was something that I was just kind of like, it has to be something that some of the people I think she was looking at were working for other organizations in other states and making six-figure salaries. And it's like, how do we attract the right talent? And I don't know. It dawned on me that the work needed to be done by somebody who cared deeply about the work, period, whether the money is there or
I
not.
mean, Brenda did it essentially for free for decades
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
she was never in it for the income. It
Yeah.
cost her
And she
money
didn't
if
have
anything.
someone fundraising. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
she maybe made enough to cover expenses.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. I looked at the
so she
financials.
was in it
Yeah.
because she believed it was important and that the work
Yeah.
needed to be done. And so
Right.
Jason and I were having a lot of conversations as he was helping kind of build up the marketing side of things. But at the time, we were not we hadn't put our name in the ring for being the ones
No.
to do the work. We were just trying to help her get things built and have the support
Hmm.
and the income and the reach marketing wise to find the
Yeah.
right person.
Yeah.
But we were concerned really that somebody would come in um, thinking it was going to be a way to make money
Yeah.
rather than coming in with a heart for the home education community and wanting to
Hmm.
protect those freedoms. Because as parents who were home educating for, I mean, our oldest daughter is in 8th grade this year and she's been home educated from the start. So
Hmm.
we were concerned about who was going to take over and whether they would have the heart that Brenda has had
And
to
the
fight
insight.
for it, to fight for it,
Yeah.
even if the money isn't there.
Yeah, and that was a big concern, and I was I was growing increasingly concerned about that. And I think I was talking with you just a private conversation between us. And I was like, I think I would do it. It just feels impossible where we are right now. I think we were at a place where I was spread thin, um, and I had already taken on as much as I could take on.
And
And I was like,
I was just coming out of having directed
yes.
a class program where I was spread super thin. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just getting ready to step away from that because it was just too much. We had
Mm-hmm.
already had so much going on.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know how we'll make the move. Like with everything, especially like even finances, we're right on that line where we need to be, no more, no less. And it's just, how do we make the move? Fit, like, just impossible. Like there's no excess to go, oh, great, we'll leverage this padded away excess to go do that and then sell this and then move. And I was like, what we really needed was just somebody who had a home. They don't need. They got a couple of extra lying around and they don't need them, and it's all right. And I was like, do you know anybody like that?
Yeah, I think the
Like
exact
that.
comment you made to me was, maybe if someone had a home that they were willing to let us live in rent free for a few months so that we could have time to sell our other home, maybe we could make this work.
Yeah,
But
that's
there's
the
no
only way
way
my
we can
brain could.
move while still paying the mortgage on this other house and having to have
No.
a rent somewhere. Like, there's no way we can do that.
Yeah.
So I think that was the comment you made to me, and it was made in the context of like, of course, this is never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what's so wild, because it was literally this time last year when I got that exact phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Someone literally called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, I hear you're interested in moving to Tallahassee." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "I have renters that just moved out unexpectedly, but I don't necessarily need the rent. If you're committed to this, we'll make it happen." And I was just like, "Fuck! What do you say?" It felt very. I don't know that everybody believes in this, so believe what you want to believe. But it felt very much like God had moved what I thought was an impossible block, and almost was daring me to keep my word. So I was like, okay, all right. It's like if you tell the wind to go and it goes, so will I. Like, that's fair. So we started making the plans to move, and I had no idea what I was getting into or how to do it or what the steps were, what
It was
was
super
next.
fast too, because if we were moving, Brenda wanted us to be here before the legislative session started,
Yeah.
which was the first week of January.
Yes.
So we made the
Thank you,
decision end of
Clive.
November, and then we had to be in Tallahassee by
Mm-hmm.
January. So we packed up
was a
everything. We had some
whirlwind.
amazing friends who came and helped us pack,
Mm-hmm.
helped us load the truck. We showed up in
Mm-hmm.
Tallahassee, sight unseen to the rental, because we were like, well, we're just going. God said go, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know. We hoped that the property manager had left the key for us, like we had discussed. Like, we had no idea. We
We had
just
no
showed up.
idea
We
about
showed up at
anything.
10 p.m. It was raining, and we're like, well, I hope we can get in the house. That was how it went.
Yeah.
And then we
Even before that, though, like the conversations I had with my the marketing business that I have, the business partner that I have there, very supportive immediately, no pushback, none whatsoever. Just like, you gotta go, you gotta go. Everything you do is remote anyway. We power to you. And I was just kind of like, wow,
that was unexpected.
there was no questioning, no second guessing. Just we'll make it work. Mind blowing.
Yeah. And then when we showed up, we weren't sure. We knew no one except Brenda here. So we weren't sure if anyone was going to show up to help us unload the truck. She said she had put some feelers out into the homeschool communities here, but we knew no one.
Yeah.
So one of the things our oldest daughter was really concerned about was friends, and she's very, very outgoing, and just was heartbroken to be leaving all of her friends. Really wanted
She
her
had some good
community.
little relationships of the
Yeah.
kids in the neighborhood around, and I remember the cab drive because she rode with me in the cab. And we were just pulling out of the neighborhood, and she was really quiet. like really quiet in the cab.
which is
That's not like
unusual for
her.
her. Yeah.
No, no. And so I asked her, I'm like, are you okay? Something wrong? And she was, I'm fine. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna leave the radio off. And if you feel like talking, you talk, and I'll just listen. And we didn't hit the gates of the community we were leaving before she just started crying. And that's not like her either. And she was like, Daddy, I know God is good and he takes care of us, but, we're leaving all of our friends behind. Like, he'll bring us new friends, I know, but how long will it take? Will it take a long time? Will it be a long time? And my heart just broke. Oh, yeah. And then fast forward to the very next day,
Yeah,
10 o'clock in the
we
morning.
arrived 10 o'clock at night. We dragged in a mattress and left everything else in the truck um,
Yeah.
because it was raining.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the next morning we got up and these people showed up right at 10
Mm-hmm.
a.m. when we were told if people were coming to help, that's when they would come.
Mm-hmm.
This van pulled up and a guy got out and his 4 kids, right around the same ages as our kids, got out and he said, "Hey, I'm here to help." And immediately their kids clicked with our kids. It was like instant friends.
Yeah.
Turned out they were having a homeschool event that night they invited us to. So within less than 24 hours of showing up in Tallahassee, we were at a homeschool event. Our kids were running around playing with like 40 other kids.
It was wild.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When those van doors opened and those 4 kids popped out on either side of it, and I had my back to it at first because I was in the truck like moving things around, and I turned and looked and there's a single van and I'm like, oh, I guess there's help. And these 4 kids popped out. They're the exact same ages as our kids. It was like, man, it was a message.
And
It
our
was a
kids,
message.
like I said, we've been here almost a year. We're still close friends with that family to this day, and
Mm-hmm.
so many more families from that homeschool group that we
Mm-hmm.
used to. It
Yeah,
was instant
it was immediate.
that we had the community here.
Yeah.
It's just this whole experience. Our house sold right away for the price we needed it to sell for. We were able to
Mm-hmm.
find something that for us was a unicorn house, which is a house with a little bit of land, but right smack in the middle of the city where we're 10 minutes
10
from the
minutes from the
capital.
capital. Yeah.
This entire move has just been amazing. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
my biggest anxiety whenever we decided to make the move was my parents because they lived near us down in the Brandon area. They were in Zephyr Hills. And I'm the only child of theirs still in the state, and they're getting older. And I
Yeah.
felt like leaving them behind just wasn't right. And so my dream, my prayer was always that we would be able to move them up here with us, but we weren't sure that we were going to be able to afford a property that had the space for that.
Yeah. We had no
And
idea.
as of about 3 weeks ago, my parents moved onto our property with us and are living up here now. So just
Yeah.
every single thing that I was worried about has been provided.
Mm-hmm.
And that
This
for
was before our top
yeah,
sponsors came in. This was
yeah.
before, like, this was all just kind of, when we made that move, it was just
So
like,
the
okay.
community here in Tallahassee, I am so grateful for
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
because from the moment we showed up, you just surrounded us with support. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
You guys are amazing. We love you all dearly. And everyone, every parent who watches this, who home educates their children, you're in it. You're sweating right there, side by side with all the rest of us parents who care so deeply for our kids that we want to personally provide the best for them that we can. We're here for you. We're here for you. That's what we do. So, but it's just this time of year has got me reflecting on what has transpired in just 1 year's time. Much more to come, I know, I'm sure, but yeah. Katie says I would call it Providence. Yeah, I agree.
but we're
Yeah.
here and committed to the work. So
Mm-hmm.
just want you guys to know we didn't make this move lightly. We made it with the commitment for the long haul. So
Mm-hmm.
we're here to do the work.
And I guess speaking of the work, let's talk about what it
Yeah.
is, I guess. So that's maybe a good segue. Thank you for that interjection. I'm glad I asked you if you wanted to talk about something first. Yeah, so for the upcoming session, Some of the things that Brenda has been aware of since the beginning of PEP. This is some very real needs. Yes, it was an idea, and yes, it was pinned and created, but there were some practical, okay, well, who does this part though, and who does that part? And none of that was really spelled out, and the legislators thought it would just get figured out as we went. But we've needed technical assistance papers from the DOE to solve some of the matters, and
And that's
we've
everything
done.
from, how the school districts actually accept PEP students, like lots of little
Mhm.
things like that, that just the logistics were not in place. So,
Yeah, there is no contracts in place or sample contracts or templates. They're working on them now. I think some of the counties down in the Miami-Dade area is working on some of those. There's a lot of things moving down in that area, which are very interesting. You'll probably hear more about as we move forward, but the media was doing a really bang up job of kind of blaming parents and lambasting them for spending the scholarship money on theme parks and all the, oh my goodness, it's wild and crazy what they're spending the money on. Meanwhile, there are parents who want to spend the money on a chemistry class here, or an advanced class there, or that mechanic shop class that the kid had that wants to keep taking, and they're being denied simply because, I mean, they're allowed to spend the money on that for PEP, but they're being denied because the districts didn't want to do the work to put the financial guidelines and do the contracts, and, well, how do we do this and how do we charge for that? It's simply like they would throw their hands up the air and be like, oh, well, we just can't do that. We just can't. We just don't know how. It's like, okay. So having the language that specifically makes them make the contracts is something that's needed to be added and spelled out, so that they'll, the rubber can meet the road on how that's supposed to happen, and parents can have the options for that if they want to. Let's see what else. There's a very real need. We've seen an uptake in micro schools. Something to keep in mind: the word micro schools is a marketing term. It's not really a like codified thing.
that exists in statute.
Yeah, like, so private tutoring exists in statute, and home education exists in statute, and personalized education program, and public schools and charter schools and private schools, etc. These are all entities. These are all things that have a legal definition, but micro schools doesn't. So they're popping up, and then it's like, well, where do they fit? What category of law describes them best, and how do we?
One of the reasons this matters is because Florida is an attendance state, which I know we've
Yeah.
talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
But you are required, and the superintendent is required to enforce that every
Mm-hmm.
student of school age is in one of the listed attendance tracks in statute. So
Mm-hmm.
if we get something popping up that is not defined, then
Mm-hmm.
the concern becomes, among other things, truancy issues, because
Yeah.
where is that falling? Which attendance track is that in? So it does
And
matter.
it does matter, and the further the issue is, if like, okay, well, let's just call them home education families, and this is how they choose to home educate. But the challenge with that is that these are drop off programs a lot of the times, 3 to fully 5 days a week drop off programs, all day, which is a very different than the home education instructional programs, and the definition for that is in the purchasing guide that Brenda worked really, really hard on kind of crafting as a parent-directed educational option, where the parents are still the ultimate decision maker on all curriculum choices, all learning, all final grades, etc.
Yeah. So as
Which is very different from micro schools, where it's kind of like a package deal, and you drop your kid off, they take care of everything. That's a bit more like
yeah,
a mini private
I just
school.
wanted to interject that
Yeah.
the distinction between parent authority and teacher slash school authority is a really pivotal
Mm-hmm.
element, because that is, as someone who directed a home education instructional program for years, and I taught there as a teacher before that, one of the main things that new instructors coming in were informed on was that these are all homeschooling students. So if
Mm-hmm.
the parent wants to exempt an assignment, if the parent doesn't want to accept the grade you gave, if the parent wants them to take a 2-month vacation because the family is doing a missions trip. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they have that ability, they have that authority, they have that freedom, and as the instructor, you're there providing a service for them.
Yeah.
You don't have the authority to tell them what they have to do or anything. And that's
Mm-hmm.
very different than a school environment. So
Right. Right.
it makes a
And
difference.
and that's so we're looking to see home education instructional programs definition kind of codified in statute. It exists in the purchasing guide, but we'd like to see it there, and we'd like to see a distinction made between full-on drop-off programs, some called micro schools or whatever, and those home education instructional programs, which are parent-directed. So there's also instructional materials, equipment, the language, the issue that we fought over this year early on. Representative Tomko introduced HB 1403, which sought to kind of restrict back the equipment and as instructional materials for the four core academic areas.
It's
So it'd be like,
interesting because originally, I think the original bill draft just restricted instructional materials, and then they quickly amended it to equipment used as
yeah,
instructional materials.
yeah, that was going to
But
be even worse.
yeah, that would have been even
Yeah,
worse. But then we
got
still had to
crazy.
fight the huge battle just to keep the
Mm-hmm.
equipment because
Mm-hmm.
what good is it to be able to take a class
Yeah,
that
it
you
doesn't
can't
make any
afford the
sense.
equipment for?
And what's
So
wild is you ask some of the things that people are like, well, why am I buying kayaks? What is that? And it's like you ask any home education family, and they go, oh, I know exactly why, and
I can tell you
they'll
20 different
just
ways that you
tell
can use
you,
a kayak.
yeah, it's like because we don't have a classroom, we don't sit in a classroom and read about
Like,
nature. We
you can
go
kayak out and take water
interact.
samples and pictures.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
of course you can use it. I can use it.
microscopes and all that. Yeah, and so they immediately know all of the reasons why, and it just baffles some of the others. So we've got a couple of things that we're armed with as far as rebuttals go, but we're keeping an eye on that again because it might come up. We don't necessarily think the assignments and stuff as we see them kind of come out. We're not necessarily sure that that's going to happen this session or not, but we're definitely watching it like a hawk so that doesn't, because that's on one of our goals. We would
Very
also
much a
like,
possibility, yes.
yeah, and we're also in step with that. We're also looking at digital devices being added to PEP. From some of the conversations that we've heard, this is a amenable idea to some of the legislators, but it really always comes down to somebody wants something, another person wants another thing, and it kind of gets negotiated over. I'll do my thing, you do your thing. If we do this, and
On
so
that point, though,
it's
the
frustrating,
digital
but
devices is probably the thing that I get contacted about the most, like
hmm
when parents are reaching out or commenting on Facebook or
hmm
whatever.
hmm
There is a post in our forum back from August, and I'll drop it in the comments on the video here, but
okay, cool,
um, it has some tips because the absolute most helpful thing you can do as a parent if you want digital devices added to PEP is to
yeah,
contact your local representative
that's correct.
now. Because if they have already heard from hundreds of their
Yes,
constituents whenever we go in there, it makes our part of the conversation so much easier.
hmm and I
Jason and
would lead
Brenda, when they're
with
in their lobbying, can leverage all of the parent voices that they hear.
that's right,
So
yes, and I would lead with, did you know that the PEP scholarship does not include digital devices? So we can sign up for virtual online classes, but our family doesn't have a computer for their kids to take one, or like lead with that, because I in some of my conversations, some of them didn't even know
yeah.
that the scholarship didn't include digital devices, and they were kind of shocked
Yeah, and on
about
that
that.
point, this is something that I learned because I didn't realize how many bills each legislator is actually having to read through in any given session. Um, they
Yeah,
may not be super familiar with this situation or the
that's
details of
correct.
what's happening.
Yeah.
So, the more that they're hearing from the constituents leading up to the legislative session, the more aware
hmm
of the issues they're going to be, and that makes the whole process just so much easier.
hmm
So I dropped the link on the Facebook. For YouTube, we'll have to, I guess, do something different. Or you can look for it on our forum on the website, but it's called
Mm-hmm.
Tips for Contacting Legislators Re-Adding Digital Devices for PEP. It's a long title, but that's exactly what it is. It tells you how to find your local legislators. It also gives some tips on how to approach the email because Brenda's advice basically is to keep it concise as possible, but also it needs to be specific and personal. It does not need to be a generic. So it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
bullet points with heart is what you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Yeah,
some
that's good.
tips on
Good
that
way of saying
in
it.
the forum post. If you're interested in reaching out to your legislators, you can use that post to kind of help you formulate something.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at the payment dates for the scholarship for PEP. It's I think UA already does this where on August 1st for renewal families they pay out instead of September. Um, for renewals, it doesn't make sense why they couldn't do this, and I know from conversations behind the scenes that the more that these scheduling type things are together, it really kind of helps them streamline. So managing a bunch of different dates is creates an additional challenge, and kind of taking some of the additional challenges off their plate by kind of letting these things line up would be a lot easier. So that's something we're looking at.
We're
Let's
looking at the
see.
timeline for applications as well, weren't we?
Yeah, I was going down further in my notes.
Okay.
In 1002.395, the parent must notify each parent that participation in the scholarship program does not. No, that's not the one. It's this one right here. The date of February 1st to April 30th creates a very tight timeline for the application window moving forward, and so we're going to try to see that pushed out.
Because
Would
a lot
like
of
to aim
families
for
won't have
June.
decided by February to April for sure what
Yeah,
they want to do.
yeah. A lot of them are not, in February are not looking yet at the next year's decision making, and so that's something that we're looking at. I think that's going to become a very. I think parents will be really upset when they come May try to apply and can't, because they'll be mad at Step Up or something,
Right.
and they don't realize
Or
it's a
even
statute
like
thing.
I
So
see
the window does need to be shifted.
both years I've seen parents applying, August, September, October.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't think people realize that the change in the language in the legislation is going to limit that. You will have like
Right.
one application window. You won't be
Yeah.
able to decide later, even if there are spots still open. So
Hmm.
that's something we're trying to work on.
And there's also some things we're looking at in terms of tutoring for the scholarship in particular. The onus right now is on the SFO, the scholarship funding organization, to ensure that services rendered under tutoring, that they vet the credentials, and it's a bottleneck for sure, especially when there are organizations or companies that offer tutoring services and hire and interview and check credentials and do all of that stuff, and that's their thing. And even so, the SFO still has to do every individual tutoring, and we'd like to find a way to put some language together to make the vetting, make it possible for the companies to be held accountable for the vetting, to streamline that if they've met certain benchmarkers and they, sign off or check off that they did, and then leave it to the company to be held accountable for their tutors and their credentials, so that the SFOs can streamline things. That would be massive. So that's something we're looking at as well. Let's see, I've got notes here, and then there is some language for athletics, the Craig Dickinson Act, that I think would be really good if we could get this addressed, so that students who are PEP students and home education students, both, when they're looking to play, there's a reference to open enrollment, that originally the open enrollment statute didn't have seat capacities, which was later added to the Constitution, the capacity limitations, was later an amendment that was added to the Constitution. And then also there are other timeline restrictions that were added that weren't originally a part of those statutes, and they kind of changed over time. So the spirit of the Craig Dickinson Act was to allow the students to be able to play and to choose the school, either that they're zoned for or that they could choose as a part of the open enrollment. But now a lot of these schools are defaulting to the position as like, oh, you can't choose us because we're at capacity. And there's no transparency on capacity. Schools are not required to post their capacity or anything like that. And one of the things that irritates me about it in the conversations is it's like, if we're playing basketball and we kept score secretly, and at the end of the game, I'm like, oh, I scored more points than you. And then you're like, I don't know. I feel like I scored more baskets than that. I'm like, oh, no, you didn't. I was keeping track. One of the reasons why we keep score the very moment a basket is made is because the transparency of doing it in that form allows the score to be trusted, and circumvents arguments. And so I think with these capacity issues, especially if you're living and dying on that, then you're going to need to provide very accurate information that can be held accountable to, so that if in fact there is availability, you have no reason to. So they're all basically defaulting to there's no capacity, so you can't apply. And they don't even provide numbers or information on that. That's their default answer. And I've pushed back on a couple of them, and we've been successful in being able to get the students to be able to play, because once they did reveal that they did have capacity, even though that was their default answer, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and we advocated for those parents and the students. Anyway, there's my mind was like replaying some of the conversations. It's something that we could easily address with a little bit of language. I'm not going to tell you what that is, because I don't want to put that out there for anyone else to consume. It is something that we want to address and clean up so that students do have access to the Craig Dickinson Act effectively, not in name only, something they can actually access. So, and I think I may have missed something from my notes here as I was kind of jumping around, but I think that pretty much sums it up. There are some other things that we are running into that may or may not be stuff that we add on as it pertains to proof of enrollment with like the DMV. We've run into a couple of situations where, because a student was exited from home education and or public school, and the wrong code was added to their student when doing so, that they showed up as truant, and then they lost their ability to get their license or have their license. And so there's some proof of enrollment things that might need to go into statute, so that can be cleared up. But as of right now, it looks like we might be able to have a technical assistance paper or something to that effect to remedy that. I know that especially with Step Up for Students, I don't know about AAA because they haven't really been working in particular with us on anything collaborative, so I don't know. But I know specifically with Step Up for Students, when we mentioned things like this to them before, like, oh, there's teacher discounts and student discounts for stuff, so proof of enrollment will be great to be able to have. And they're like, okay, great. So they created the certificate and the dashboard and stuff like that. And these are ways, non-statutory ways, that some of these things can be solved, which is great. But then, like the DMV is going to need you have to go through our steps to do this, and this to remedy your truancy. And it's like, okay, but how do we take this over here and this over here and marry them up? So there's just stuff we're working on. Hello from Tampa. Hi, Dina. Isaiah and Elisa are doing
math.
They're doing math, Dina. They're doing math. I would edit that comment. Your kids are not doing math. I love you. Oh, that warms my heart. I love you dearly. I'm so looking forward to seeing you soon, I hope. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up goals and plans and things that we're looking for. The FHSAA's PLAC, the Public Liaison Advisory Committee that I'm on, we're going to be sitting in on the Tallahassee sectional appeals. They're happening tomorrow, so that's keeping those relationships warm. Let's see. Oh, conventions and conferences. Now is the time to be thinking about those. We mentioned FPEA as one of our top sponsors. Love you guys. I reached out to them to see if they wanted to join us on one of the podcasts upcoming in the future. I'm waiting to hear back from them. We'll see. They can talk about, they got a lot of cool stuff going on and coming up, so that'll be great. This is a very small window. Man, it's like time flies. Very small window of months before convention and conference season starts, right after legislative session ends.
Most of them start, I think the earliest ones are end of April is kind of when that season starts.
Yeah. Well, one of them, I think the Hispanic one was I think in February. Yeah. And they just moved theirs to July, I believe. I'm hoping there's not a conflict with the other one that we do in July, because I would love to get down there and go to that one. So we'll see. We're still working on some of those. But yeah, lots of conferences and conventions. Be on the lookout for those. As we see the dates for some of those come in as well, we may even just go ahead and create a post in the forum for which ones we're going to be at. That way,
Yeah, we'd love for all of y'all to come and see us.
There's a timeline. Absolutely. I don't really have anything else. Let me see what was on my agenda here.
Hi,
Oh,
Isaiah.
hi, Isaiah.
Hi, it's me, Isaiah.
Hey, math. Yeah. There were a few more issues, I think, that I've seen trickle in of PEP being switched to EO by accident. If you see those, just send, step up a message, obviously. But if you're not getting through or need help, send us a message about that. That is a known issue that we have a direct line to send people through to one of our contacts over there who can help look into those in a speedy manner, because that did become a known issue. So, yeah, outside of that, I think we're ready to wrap things up. I will take a moment here, though, to plug the Tell Your Story project. One of the things, we mentioned a couple of things that we're working on, and what I've run into a lot. You're doing a great job from Isaiah. Thanks, buddy. One of the things I run into a lot is the gap of knowledge. Like what even is homeschooling? And it's not one of those things that we want to be so nebulous it's undefinable. But I think it's very important that even with the influx of post-COVID uptick in homeschooling families across the country, I think it was now 90. I think it moved to up 4%. So it was maybe 1 or 2%, and now it's up to 4% of the population homeschools. It's a huge growth for homeschooling, but it's still not a big part of the overall population. So the chances are that people actually understand what homeschooling really is slim. And so having a repertoire of content that allows people to see that is huge. I know that there are so many times where we're doing things and it just becomes a teachable moment because we're chopping wood in the backyard or we're burning something, and it's here's how this looks or that, and this is a chemical chemical change, and what is that? And here we talk about things, and it's always unique. It's not something that you just have to sit in four walls with a book or a computer and read about things. We go interact with the world on those levels, and as you do that, take pictures, take video. We're really just looking for parents to kind of tell, what it is that they do, why they do it. Keep it under 60 seconds. Doesn't have to be long. It's not a big dramatic documentary. Just a quick, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and here's the impact that it's had on our family. Like, oh, my kid was struggling in math. I know that one family that we talked to recently, their child is bright. She's reading on a 12th grade, I think, or somewhere up there reading level, and
she's like 10, I think.
She's 10, and so she just blasts through the work, and then she, gets in trouble because she's bored in class, and she's, looking for something to do and interact with, and that it's a difficult thing. And so watching they pull their kid, and they're watching the changes that it's had on her and the impact. And so just talk about, in general, just talk about those things, speak from the heart. Send us a little video. There's an upload button right here on the site. We've got a couple of samples of what someone else did. Katie Lane, thank you very much for sending those in. Yours do not have to be as amazing as hers are. They can be much simpler, but we think they're great. Send those in to us and help us make an impact. These become shareable content when anyone's talking to their representative. Representatives come and go, but this content can sit in our repertoire online and be a reference tool ongoing. And that's the idea of the value of it here. And then I guess I'll say we'll leave off with this. We'll close with this, I suppose. We have support options as low as $5 a month, or one times if you want to. And there's so many different ways and options I've worked to get available if you're a family anywhere in Florida and you love your home education rights. Help us protect them. And it's as little as buying a cup of coffee. I think the cost of coffee went up, so that might not even be enough for a cup of coffee anymore a month. But by all means, every little bit goes a long way. And it also lets us know, every time I see one of those notifications kind of come in, it lets us know, like, hey, there's a parent who's arm in arm with us in this. And if nothing else, the advocacy work that we do, we don't charge for any of that. We do it because it's a core part of being in the statutes and protecting parents' rights. The back and forth that we do with Step Up for Students and other organizations that we work and collaborate with is just the grunt work that has to be done. So it's not like we charge anyone anything for any of this stuff. The support forum, if you want to ask questions, jump right in. There's no charge. You want to create a membership on the website, create a membership on the website. It's free. Dive right in, start connecting and communicating and helping each other out or asking questions from us that we can answer, and enjoy all of that. There's no cost. So the donations and the support really do help us maintain it, though. So, Ian, I don't really have anything else to add. This is normally where I would go to Brenda and say, Brenda, what do you want to close with? But Crystal, you're here.
I don't really have anything else to add either. So
okay. All right. Well, with that, we'll say thank you then again to our top sponsors, Arete, FPEA, and Fisher Precious Metals. We really appreciate you making the support that you do available to us so that we can work as hard as we do for these parents. And for all the rest of you, the year is dwindling. We're in the final stretch. Go, be, prosper, make memories, and we'll see you guys next week.